While we are a democracy, we're at best representative. Citizens and stakeholders are seldom heard. A vote every 4 years leads to a promise that might influence a particular policy sometime down the road or change some decision. Why can't we update the way we decide collectively? Can we use technology to make better decisions in government? Jamie Joyce thinks so. She spoke last year, and we wanted to give her work on the Society Library a wider audience. She's brought us a case study, a divided city council that used the tools she's created to make a decision in a more methodical, inclusive, informed, and unbiased way. To take us through this story, please welcome the founder and executive director of the Society Library, Jamie Joyce. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So good to have you. I don't want to get in the way. Take it away.
All right, sounds good. Hi there, everyone. Hopefully you can see my screen. Today we're going to be talking about more logical decisions in local government. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from San Francisco, California, USA, which was once home to dozens of tribes of the Ohlone. Beyond just an acknowledgement, in preparation for this talk, I also found a Creative Commons licensed Ohlone spoken word video, and I submitted it to Wikitongues. Wikitongues is a nonprofit organization that archives and preserves digital assets in order to produce dictionaries and educational materials to revitalize languages, especially those who are under threat of endangerment from colonialization and other political oppression. So moving on, and with that being said, I've only got less than 20 minutes of your time, so I want this to be of value to you. There will also be some resources that you can get at the end, and let's get started. My name is Jamie Joyce, and I'm the founder of the Society Library. And what we work on is essentially big data democracy projects. To us, democracy relies on various different entities, including a politician to represent ideas, a Congress or parliament to structure deliberation and debate, and informational institutions like the media and public libraries. The problem that we're now facing is that we're in a big data society, and we believe that our debates, our media, our societal communication, and our politics are not really reckoning with that level of complexity and density. So at the Society Library, we're working on a new kind of public library, new kinds of media, a new way to represent public sentiments on social issues, and a new form of mass societal deliberation in order to deal with the big data society that we're living in. Our main project right now is to enable big data debate, which means figuring out a way in which we can actually have structured debate about social and political issues using the collective intelligence and knowledge of an entire society. This means we extract knowledge from books, scholarly articles, recorded conference videos like this, blogs, podcasts, and more, and reorganize that content as a societal scale conversation. Essentially, we're working on figuring out how to enable the most informed, inclusive, and logical conversation possible. But today I'm not going to talk about any of that. I'm actually going to talk about a small town debate, small town sense making, and how to make more logical decisions at the local level. There's going to be two parts. First, I'm going to explain how tricky it is to make informed, inclusive, and unbiased decisions. And then we'll review a case study, and I'll show you what you can do today, hereafter, to make your decisions more rational. So part one, why making rational decisions are super tricky. Exhibit A, remember this? What color is this dress? In 2015, this was the dress that broke the internet because people disagreed about what color it was. Some people see the dress as black and blue, and others see it as gold and white. Why? Well, if I'm not mistaken, the current accepted belief about color is that it is an experience of the mind. It's essentially in our imagination. It is something that our brains generate for us to see based on external stimuli. So we see this dress differently because our brains develop different hallucinations of color for us to experience. Just to quickly summarize things, according to Pascal Wallish in his paper in the Journal of Vision, the likely reason why people see this dress differently is because our brains are making different assumptions about the lighting of the dress based on our past experiences. So for example, if you're a person who is generally exposed to lots of natural light, your brain assumes the dress is in a natural light, it makes assumptions about the shadow it's in, and it corrects it gold and white. If your brain assumes the dress is in artificial light because you spend a lot of time up late at night in front of your computer, like me, then your brain is likely to correct it to black and blue. Our brains make assumptions about the environment based on past experiences and then create mental representations for us to experience. A group of people can look at this exact same dress and swear it is different colors. Many of you in the audience probably disagree about what color this dress is. And so forgive me, but I'm going to extrapolate a little bit for the sake of metaphor and say humans generally don't see the world in the same way. Exhibit B, Look at this image. It's kind of a faded picture of a plate of strawberries. A lot of you are going to actually see the color red in this image, but I promise you there is no red at all in this image. I've even sliced out little pixels and moved them around because I didn't believe it myself. But there's no red here. Our brains just assume, based on past experience with strawberries, that this should be red, and the wacky lighting conditions of the image give our brains all the reasons it needs to adjust and input that color for us. So no wonder why we don't agree on everything, and sometimes society has a hard time coming to consensus decisions. Humans literally don't see eye to eye, and perhaps we just generally see what we want to see, like with these red strawberries. But I'm here to tell you that it actually gets much more complex than that, because we're not all even seeing the same information to begin with. We're in the age of information overload, echo chambers, rabbit holes, and an algorithmic a la carte information consumption with feeds and streams curated just for your preference and giving us all different digital realities to experience. And those preferences are informed by whole lifetimes of exposure to different stimuli that affects the way that we think, like with the dress. It was because of our past experiences with light, because of our background, that our brains adjusted what we were seeing to make sense of it. People's past influences how they perceive things in the present. Another problem is that, frankly, a lot of people may assume it's not them who are seeing things in a distorted way, but others. We are not influenced by the past. We are rational. We know what we're seeing. We know we're not wrong. But that kind of distortion is just one of over 190 different cognitive biases. We overestimate the way how much we know, we misremember things, we assume we know what other people are thinking, and we are drawn towards confirming what we already believe. And even when we're really trying to be reasonable and use argumentation and facts to make decisions, our brains can make over 300 kinds of logical errors while trying to draw conclusions. Our attention, our memory, and information processing can also all be impacted by whether or not we're fed, stressed, rested, or caffeinated. Plus, our senses are just outright limited. I mean, look at this shrimp. This mantis shrimp, supposedly, can see in more colors than you can imagine, 16:3. Look at this dog. You probably see more colors than this dog can imagine. And what can this ant see? I mean, I don't know, but it's probably crazy. And you know what else is crazy? Is that sometimes we intentionally do not even want to see things clearly. We do not want to make rational decisions because sometimes we're just being a little sassy and bratty, and we don't even want the ice cream if it doesn't have rainbow sprinkles. So what can we do? How can we make informed, logical, and inclusive collective decisions if we're just a bunch of biased, illogical, overwhelmed, sassy, bratty babies who have a more limited visual spectrum than a shrimp, running around hallucinating realities, swearing up and down that ours is the right one? Well, one step we could take is to have the intellectual humility to admit how irrational we are, but I think we can also make tools to understand the world a little bit better. I mean, once upon a time, we, as in large groups of humans in the past, generally thought that the sun went around the earth, probably because it was pretty obvious from where we were literally standing. But when we invented tools like math and telescopes and stuff like that, and psychotechnologies like paying more attention, we were then able to draw different conclusions about the nature of reality through tool-assisted observation. So tools can help us see the world a little bit more clearly, or at least differently, and give us new perspectives. It's through tools we created that we could come to the understanding that mantis shrimp has a much more wide-ranging visual spectrum than we can. So, in summary, there are several ways in which we corrupt our ability to make reality-based decisions. We're consuming different information, we have a background of different experiences, and we process things in biased and illogical ways. We see what we want to, and some of us just simply can't see eye to eye, even if we're looking at the exact same thing. In many ways, the tools that we were born with in our minds can be flawed, but I think we can invent new tools to see beyond what our brains can. And so let's move on to part 2. Let's talk about a very simple tool that you can use right now, today, hereafter, to make slightly more informed, unbiased, and inclusive decisions. We use this simple tool in a project we did with a city council in Florida. We're going to talk about this case study, and I'm going to use the fictional name of the town of Middleton, and I'm going to anonymize a few details, but overall, this is a true story. So, in this town of Middleton, Florida, USA, a city council was presented with a tough decision. The city council was being pressured by activists to let the public vote on changing the voting structure of the city from at-large to single member. The town currently elected its council at large, which means just the top 5 most popular candidates citywide are elected to the council. Single member means that the city would be broken up into 5 different districts, with each district voting for just 1 representative. Activists argue that a person of color hadn't been elected to the council in over 130 years, partly because it was too expensive to campaign citywide. and that breaking up the council seats by district so that candidates only need to compete to win a district as opposed to the whole city would make a more diverse city council possible due to more logistical and financial accessibility. They wanted the council to vote, to put it on a ballot so that the public could decide. But the council as a whole did not agree with this reasoning. And so a citywide debate ensued. The mayor expressed his ideas through a local newspaper. Another newspaper the town over was criticizing him in the council. Activists held community events. They set up their own website. They were on Facebook. Public council meetings started dragging on and on and on and on for hours with argumentation unending. The council just simply couldn't decide. They didn't know if they should put the opportunity to change the voting structure of the city on the ballot or not. Because of the racially sensitive nature of the debate, they called in a mediating party, a nonprofit that specializes in nonviolent communication. And then that group called us, the Society Library. We were asked to help the city council come to a more unbiased, logical, and inclusive decision. So we did. We built a decision-making model. This is a very simple model, which you can copy and apply to any decision in your life, and I really encourage you to. I use it all the time. This tool does not require any big data democracy skills or skill suites. This is just something pretty much anyone can do. And what is so simple but so powerful about what I'm about to show you is that all we're doing is externalizing the decision-making process. We're moving the decision from the black box of our minds to a fresh scrap of paper. So this is what we did for the council, and you can do it for yourself too. Step 1, set the stage and pose the question. For the city council, the question was whether or not to put an initiative on the ballot so that the public could decide to change the way the city votes for city council members. For you personally, the decision may be whether or not to date someone or what school your child should attend. Step 2, identify all the stakeholders of the decision. Who has something to say about this? Who will be affected by this decision? For the town of Middleton, the stakeholders were the activists, the city council members, the mayor, the public, the newspapers, various demographic identities, and a few other parties. For you personally, the stakeholders could be you and your partner, or your family, or your company. Step 3, gather all of the relevant arguments, claims, and evidence from each of the stakeholders and from all the media that you can find about the stakeholders and the issue. For us, we started performing recorded interviews with the activists. We accessed the city council's public email exchanges, their meeting notes. We consulted with academics. We extracted useful data from scholarly works on the subjects. And from recorded council meetings, we collected newspaper clippings, statements from the mayor. We sat in on community meetings. Hopefully you get the idea. Basically, it's just about collecting all of the supporting and refuting positions and evidence about a decision. Step 4, so easy, just create a pro-con list. By identifying all of the stakeholders in a decision and gathering all of their ideas as well as ideas about them, just create a list that identifies the supporting and refuting arguments, claims, and evidence. Cluster the pro and cons by topic in order to start identifying the dimensions of the decision. It's such a simple thing, but I'm telling you it's very effective. For the town of Middleton, they thought they had a simple yes-no decision to put the voting initiative on the ballot, but it actually required consideration of 25 different dimensions of the issue and 55 different arguments for and against the issue across those dimensions. It seems like a lot, but by using this model, you don't need to make one big decision all at once. Instead, you can actually make a series of micro decisions. By collecting 55 different arguments from all the stakeholders and breaking them up into 25 different dimensions, we asked the council members to just vote on one dimension at a time. They were not making one decision. They were making 25 tiny little decisions. And by tallying up the micro votes, you just get a completely different perspective on the issue. You can still make your decision however you wish, but you just have a new way of augmenting your intelligence and understanding of the problem. With Middleton, we did not add weight to the arguments, but anyone can. A legal argument could be worth 2 points in a tally, and perhaps an opinion-based argument with no evidence may be only worth ½ a point. The weighting can either be extremely subjective or extremely sophisticated. It's all customizable, but overall, you don't even need to get that fancy, because the most important step is to take the mental calculation in your mind with all of those literal hundreds of biases and fallacies that could corrupt your decision, and take that out of your head into something that's external, it's visual, it's scrutinizable, and can be used as a concrete point of reference. As a service to the city council, we did all this steps for them. They didn't really have to participate. We just gave them a 13-page long checklist in which they made their micro votes across those 25 issues. It was rather easy. In fact, one of the commissioners said, "You took such a complex issue and you made it so simple, thank you." What about the activists? Well, the leader of the activist group said that they finally felt heard. And because they felt heard, they were eager to hear the rebuttals. They wanted the conversation to keep going. They said that the model was straightforward and easy for anyone to understand. They believed the document exceeded the challenge of informing anyone who used it. She said, and I quote, "It was mindset breaking." The mediator in the conversation said that working with us brought a lot of relief. Our model was easy, direct, clear. Instead of talking about the same issues over and over and over, we showed them how to create an accurate and accountable concrete record of data so that people didn't have to rely on memory-based records of what was being discussed. One member of the council also said that he thought he was completely on the fence on the issue. For him, it was a 50-50 call. He was uncertain. But when he micro-voted and got to literally see his stance on each and every single individual issue, he was in favor of the motion and in favor of the activist position 18 out of 25 dimensions. He literally just needed the decision externalized and visualized for him to see that. So what was the vote? What happened? Well, two of the commissioners who were a staunch no from the beginning actually refused to use the model altogether. I was told it was because they didn't want to go on record with their microvotes. This motion would have still won amongst those who did use the model, but one commissioner did not show up to the vote. The vote therefore tied and failed to pass. Feel a little bit guilty in case anyone assumed that this would have led to a reasonable outcome, because they did have an opportunity to reach a reasonable conclusion, but they didn't. They refused to participate fully for whatever reason. And that's part of the problem. And I think many of us observe that that's a persistent problem in many government sectors. Organizations like mine, the Society Library, can build the technology to augment our decisions to make them more informed, inclusive, and unbiased, whether it's a very simple model like this one or a big data societal scale deliberation. But the failure to test and implement these technologies is what is holding democracy back, in my opinion. But frankly, I think we may all be holding ourselves back if we're not using methods to overcome some of the biases in our mind. So this talk is really not about Middleton. It's about you. We have had other activists and council members who've heard about our work and reached out to us, and we're working with them on the same localized issue to make more informed decisions. We now offer decision-making models as a service, and we even run an educational program to teach poli-sci and public administration students how to make them. But as a part of our Forward 50 talk, we want to teach you how to make them for you in your personal, professional, and political life. So if you send us an email at this address, we will send you a step-by-step guide on how to create these simple models so that you can make more informed, unbiased, and inclusive decisions, either personally or implementing them elsewhere. Our materials are just about these weighted pro-con models, but we will also be sending you a whole list of a bunch of other processes and resources. So feel free to write to us. And remember, if in this moment you think you're already too logical and cool to even bother trying to use a model to augment your decisions, well, then you may want to consider that's a cognitive bias you got there. So thank you for your time. We hope to hear from you. And please feel free to follow along with all of our big data democracy model work at societylibrary.com.
Jamie, I kind of hate you because you're such a good speaker. And we'll throw the URL for that in the chat. Thank you so much.
Of course.
It's going to lead right into the conversation I'm about to have with Gideon. It's always amazing to see you. And you managed to get through a lot of content there in a very short amount of time, but it was fantastic. I really, you're saving democracy. And I think that as long as things like what you and what Nick was talking about and so on, as long as you start to see these things, we have to realize that the traditional representation and, vote once every 4 years are things that just don't catch up with what's possible in digital. So thank you so much for bringing that to us. And I hope everybody goes and learns more about the Society Library and the amazing work you're doing.
Blowing up with love.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we hope to see you next time.